arguments for tax reform. How are the Democrats responding in this final sprint? We're joined now by Congressman Steny Hoyer, Democrat of Maryland, and House Minority Whip. Mr. Minority Leader Whip, I can tell you I just got back from Alabama, and I want to get to tax reform in a second, but there's breaking news reporting from Politico that Speaker Ryan Wang resigning after the midterm elections. What do you make of all of that, and can Democrats take back control of the House?
Well, I do not know what Speaker Ryan is thinking. He hasn't talked to me about it, but I'm not surprised. Speaker Boehner left because he had a deeply divided party, and it made it very difficult for him to pursue rational, reasonable, positive policies. Frankly, I think Speaker Ryan has confronted the same kind of environment, and maybe he just thinks there's some way he could more productively serve.
Congressman, we'll have to break in for a second because the U.S. FCC has voted to end Obama-era net neutrality rules. This was widely expected. The proposal came last month from the FCC chair Ajit Pai, but we're now getting the vote tally, and it has ended the Obama-era net neutrality rules. Now, this is a move to deregulate the telecom and cable industry, and now it's undoing the 2015 classification of broadband as a common carrier service. Right, we'll get you more of the latest as soon as we get them. But for now, let's get back to the congressman. And Congressman Steny Hoyer, we were talking about tax reform and what happens in Congress next. Once a final tax bill is passed, first of all, do you expect that to carry on? Because we are now hearing from different senators that they could have reservations about the final bill.
Well, again, I haven't seen the conference report. I asked the majority leader just a few minutes ago, was it available to be looked at, and he indicated that it was not. So I don't know exactly what they've done, but I agree with you. I don't think it is a sure thing that it's going to pass the United States Senate. First of all, what they've done is made it a bill that is even more skewed toward the wealthy in America. The bills, the House and the Senate bills, excuse me, had millions of people getting a tax hike. They had it 62% plus of the wealthiest people in America were getting 62% of the benefits. So this bill would have also had an impact, and I think this conference report will also have the impact of a $25 billion cut in Medicare next year. So that this is not a bill that the American people support. As a matter of fact, the polls show that they overwhelmingly oppose it.
And Corey Johnson right now of Bloomberg News joining us on the FCC's net neutrality decision. And Corey, you have a question for the Congressman.
Well, Congressman Hoyer, and I'm sorry you seem to have the same cold all of us seem to have on the East Coast right now.
Yeah.
I'm curious about your take on what the FCC is saying about net neutrality. Obviously, there's a Democrat-Republican divide here, but you've had big contributors in Alphabet and Facebook to your most recent campaign, and I just wonder how you look at this net neutrality ruling and whether you think that the Comcast of the world should have the upper hand here, or it's the companies that are providing content on the internet.
Look, I think we are very disappointed at the FCC action. We think in a democracy, the free access, not free, but access to information on a non-discriminatory basis is absolutely essential in a democracy, so that we want to see all information, all users be treated equally, and net neutrality does that. So we're very, very concerned about the action that the FCC has taken, and we think it was an action that was not good for the American people.
I got a two-part question for you. First and foremost, sticking with the FCC, breaking news there that the FCC voting to roll back those regulations. But Congressman, what exactly can your party do in order to reverse course on that? That's point number one. And the second is you just got off the floor and you had a 71-minute back and forth with Mr. McCarthy. Can you tell us what's going to come of that? Because I know that a lot of folks wondering about that back and forth as well.
Well, we think the Republican majority has not done the work of the American people. They have not given us the opportunity to do the work of the American people. They've been focused on really two bills, the repeal of the Affordable Care Act. They took some 9 months to try to do that, and they failed. They're now passing a tax bill in the most ramrod way, just ramming it through. No hearings, no witnesses, very little time to consider one of the most complex pieces of legislation that the Congress passes, and that's a tax bill. We think it is a very, very negative impact on the American people, and we are pleased that the American people get it. They know what this bill does. It gives money to the rich and doesn't do much for the working class, and that's not a good thing, particularly when you have Speaker Ryan saying that's the objective of this bill. It's not. It doesn't do that, and I think that's why Senator Rubio, who has seen this conference report, as we hear it explained, advantaging the wealthiest in America even more than either the House or Senate bill did, is having reservations about it. So that, yes, it was a colloquy, but the reason it was a long colloquy is because we are down to the last days of the session without having accomplished so much of what we need to do. And, of course, I listed a litany of 10 to 12 things that are must-do pieces of legislation that we have not passed.
But Congressman, how do you, so sticking with the FCC now, so and the Republican majority and being, you know, in the minority party, how do you push back? How do you actually address, for example, with the FCC, how do you reverse that course given that you don't have a majority?
Well, obviously, we push back very hard. We explain to the American people, who I think overwhelmingly believe that net neutrality is the best policy for them, their families, and their communities, and their country. So I think from that standpoint, the people are with us. We need to make that argument. And very frankly, what the American people can do and what we need to do is take back the majority in 2018 so we can address that policy with a majority in the Congress and in the Senate. Obviously, you're right. Without majorities, without the ability to put legislation on the floor, it's very, very difficult to change this policy.
And Congressman, we are now hearing from Attorney General. Right, from Attorney General Eric Schneiderman saying that he will sue to stop the illegal rollback of net neutrality. We had already heard from Senator Edward Markey, a Democrat from Massachusetts, saying that he plans to also file a brief against the order as a legal challenge. How united are the Democrats right now on trying to stop the rolling back of net neutrality rules?
I think the Democrats are very united. We voted on this before. Overwhelmingly, the Democratic Party has taken the position that in a democracy like ours, we need to have net neutrality, equal access, equal treatment of those who use the Internet. We think that's what a democracy should expect and, frankly, demand. So that I think the court route is obviously perhaps the only route we have available to us now until such time as we take back the majority, which, very frankly, I think is more likely every day.
Wow.
Congressman, I wonder also, you know, when you look at this, the argument on the other side was that the Federal Trade Commission should be looking at this, not the FCC, and that this went from a protection to a regulation, that it was just unnecessarily bureaucratic. I wonder what your take is on that argument.
I don't think that's the argument that may have been the argument used. That was not the underlying reason. The underlying reason was they didn't like the fact that there couldn't be disparate treatment from volume users or special users, and they thought that. And I know I have a lot of friends in the internet network providers, the ISPs, and I understand their argument. But we really believe that open access, equal treatment is the best policy in a democracy. And whether it's the FCC or the FTC is not really the issue. The issue is, do you agree with the policy or don't agree with the policy? That's a make-weight argument that I don't think is the honest argument as to why this action was taken.
And for those of us joining us, the FCC has announced that they're rolling back the Obama-era net neutrality regulations. The New York Attorney General saying that he will lead a multi-state lawsuit going against this. And we're, of course, joined by the Democrat whip, Steny Hoyer. Mr. Hoyer, let me follow up on this with regards to the multi-state lawsuit that could make its way through. I mean, we've seen this in the past as a strategy on immigration, for example, where state leaders really taking it to going against the administration. How significant of a strategy is this, Mr. Congressman, in order to combat some of these regulations? I mean, does it really have a chance of working?
Well, I think it really has a chance of working. I'm not expert on the pleadings or the case that is being made as to why the FCC's ought to be reversed on this issue. However, it is the avenue that is available. We are a nation of laws. The courts can oversee this and see, A, whether it was done correctly from a procedural standpoint, and then, if so, was it substantively within the law and appropriate to take this action. So you asked me, is this it may not be the best way. The best way would be legislatively, but this is a way. It is a way that is available. And obviously, a lot of attorneys general throughout the United States believe that this is harmful to their publics, to their citizens in their states, and so they are filing action on their behalf to ensure equal treatment and equal access to the Internet.
Congressman, of course, you're very busy right now dealing with the spending deal as well. House Republicans pushing a military spending bill paired with a measure to keep the rest of the government open. Will the Democrats try to block the CR? And if so, are we headed for a government shutdown?
Look, I hope we're not for a government shutdown. We've never been for a government shutdown. The Republicans, as I said on the floor today, have on a number of occasions shut down the government purposefully to accomplish objectives that they want. What we are saying is we need to do our work. We voted for, and by the way, this CR that we expect to come on Tuesday, if it doesn't pass, will not shut down the government. We have another 72 hours before after that. So we have till next Friday until the government shuts down. So we have time to reach bipartisan agreement on critical issues that must be done. CHIP, the Child Health Insurance Program, is certainly high on that list. Flood insurance for people damaged by storms is high on that list. Fixing the national security apparatus for protecting the American people from terrorists is high on that list. Perkins Loan Program for students. There are a number of items. I can name 5 or 6 others that are high on the list of things that we must get done. Yeah. And we think, frankly, that just kicking the can down the road, which we voted for 90 days ago, unfortunately, in that 90 days, none of those have been accomplished. And it's time to say enough is enough of wasting time. Let's do the work of the American people.
Congressman Steny Hoyer, Democrat of Maryland and House Minority Whip, after 71 minutes on the House floor, joining us on Bloomberg in the middle of breaking news with the FCC talking taxes and the budget. We very much appreciate your time, Congressman.
And Speaker Ryan saying he's had enough himself.
Yeah, can't forget that.
You bet.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thanks a lot.
Hey.